Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Circle Debate Podcast. This is the host of Devious What Ivan C here alongside with my brothers from another mothers, and that is the CK1 himself, the one and only Chris Kennedy, and also Mr. MGC, Mr. Matthew Steamboat. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have an honorary guest, and finally we got him on the show. He is not just a star. From becoming a lifeguard, becoming a star, not one star, but 5-star, okay, ladies and gentlemen, 5 stars, ladies and gentlemen. He is Memphis' own Golden Boy, and that is the CEO and founder of Championship Wrestling From Memphis, the man himself in the hour, Mr. Dustin Starr. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Hey, I'm kind of impressed. You threw a lifeguard reference in there. Everybody's like, "What does that mean?" Yeah, but thanks for having me on. I've listened to a couple of your podcasts already with some of the boys, Slice Boogie and I believe Danny Limelight, 2 of my favorites. They're going to be on the show this Saturday, and yeah, man, thanks for reaching out and thanks for having me on. Let's talk some wrestling.
That's right, definitely. We had Papo yesterday. We had Papo Esco, so that would be. So yeah, he told me to ask you something. So
yeah, I'm sure he did. Papo Esco has quickly become one of my favorite characters on this show because, as you know, he's got a way with words. Oh, the man with 1,000 suits, Dustin Starr. Hey, Dustin Starr, man with 1,000 suits. Tell your wife that she needs to pronounce my name correctly. Hey, real quick, I got a funny story. So when Papo debuted on Championship Wrestling, I believe Maria called him Papa Esco. And so I thought it was funny. Anytime my wife mispronounces something, I'm kind of like, hey, that's cool. Let's just go with it, you know? And so we got a message on Instagram. He saw it. Mm-hmm. And so at first I thought, oh no, he hates us. We're in big trouble. But it was actually a comment instead of a direct message. I was like, okay, no, we're cool, because if he would have direct messaged us, he would have been mad, right? But and then we've just played off of that here for a while. So yeah, Papo is really cool. Love Papo Esco.
Oh yeah, we love him too, man. He just told me to ask you, like, what are you gonna do with the haircut? He said you need to cut the hair. That's why he's been bothering you.
I think he needs to go bigger.
Dustin Starr, man of 1,000 suits, get your haircut already. That's what he says.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Hey, you know what though? I mean, really, the taller the better.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I saw a photo of you on your Instagram. It was Johnny Bravo level. It was very impressive. I loved it.
I was Johnny Bravo for Halloween just for that reason. It's like, hey, this is easy.
That might have been what I saw. Yeah.
I love it.
You have the accent. We're all good.
You have the accent. You're in Tennessee, so.
Hey. There you go. Hey, baby.
Cartoon Network for the live action reboot. Hit us up.
Right? There you go.
I'm available.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it. You heard it right.
So you are a man of proverbial many hats, not just the hair. You wrestle, you are a manager, you run the business, you're a family man. How many job titles do you have right now, and how do you spin that with your at-home duties?
My resume out. Oh my gosh. So I've been wrestling, professional wrestling, for over 20 years. I started training when I was 15 years old, and that's all I ever wanted to do growing up in Memphis, Tennessee. It was all about Memphis wrestling. There was no other thing that I wanted to do in the world. So I had blinders on. You know, my mom drove me out to Jericho, Arkansas when I was 15. She signed the waiver form. I paid my own way, and man, I was a 140-pound kid. Literally, they thought, we're just going to take this kid's money. And I don't mean that in disrespect. I just mean it as there's a kid that wants to roll around in the wrestling ring, and I basically grew up in the wrestling business. And so fast forward through, working live television and being on Memphis TV and working with some of the guys that I grew up watching, like Jerry the King Lawler, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, Superstar Bill Dundee, PG-13. I mean, I could go on and on, the who's who of Memphis wrestling that I was able to work with. But then about 10 years or so ago, I signed with WWE. And so I went to the developmental system. I spent a year there, and I think they realized that what they had kind of signed me for and what I was interested in doing were kind of 2 different things. So they said, hey, go out there, do your thing, get over, and you can come back anytime you want. Well, before that day was even up, I had a tryout with Impact Wrestling. I had several interviews already lined up with sports teams in Memphis. You mentioned family. My wife and baby are walking by over here, and my dogs are probably going crazy in the background. But here we go. Cameo from Reese.
Oh,
that's
How you doing, buddy?
What's up, little guy? The future of the business right there.
Yeah, the future tag team champions right
I
here.
don't know about that.
on a short enough timeline, he might be taking on -1 in AEW.
There you go.
They're
There
only
you go
about,
for
they're
the
only about 8 years apart.
TNT championship. Well, so anyways, I worked a little bit in hockey, and then when I came back from the deal at WWE, the whole thing with Impact was like, there's no money here. So you don't want to be here. So I'm like, all right, well, let me figure out what I want to do. And so I started working with the sports teams here in Memphis. So currently, fast forward all these years, now I'm the in-game MC for all the home games for the Memphis Grizzlies at FedEx Forum.
Oh,
And that all started through wrestling, to where they would have wrestling night, and I would help book the event. And first they brought me in and they said, hey, look at the ribbon boards, listen to the music. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And at first I'm like, why are they
almost
asking me?
like a producer style, like they.
Yeah, it was like, why are they asking me? But I was their wrestling guy. My buddy for a long time is Grizz, who we've been tight. We do the Grind City Wrestling podcast together, and
Not the hip hop artist Grizz.
No. The mascot that dives off the balconies and smashes people through tables.
No worries.
Yeah, so I started working with the Memphis Grizzlies, and then I kind of stumbled into doing PA for their developmental team, which is the Memphis Hustle. And then Maria, my wife and my co-host, she worked for the Memphis Redbirds, which is the minor league affiliate AAA team of the St. Louis Cardinals. And so we started working television together, hosting the CW30 network. So he said, well, why don't you guys do that here? So then we started emceeing baseball together. And then that kind of trickled into doing as a new team here in the pandemic. So I got into soccer, and the Grizzlies have their own marketing company, media company called Grind City Media. So we do the Grind City Wrestling podcast. You can check that out at grindcitymedia.com/podcasts. And gosh, I know I'm leaving something out. I've done ring announcing for MMA companies.
I don't know how you remember all that.
2 years ago. Oh my gosh, I've got to write all this stuff down somewhere. But I know I'm going to leave somebody out. But so now also owning and hosting the Championship Wrestling presented by Pro Shingle every Saturday at noon. It's on CW30 Memphis, and then also on YouTube. So you can watch anywhere in the world. It's youtube.com/Championship Wrestling. And so that kind of turned into, writing and pandemic. I've learned how to use Adobe Premiere and just different tools to help. We've also kind of turned into a marketing company through all this, because when the live events went away, most of my income is doing live sporting events, whether it's wrestling, basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever the case may be. And so then that kind of changed and morphed into a marketing company. So we literally kind of do anything that we can, I guess, to keep from having a real job.
Before the pandemic and when there were matches allowed, were you spinning all of those duties and an in-ring performer, or have you moved from one side of the ropes to the other side completely?
I've done them all. I mean, it would be nothing to have, 3 Grizzlies games that week and then be on a Saturday night wrestling in one of the small towns, and then, also shooting television that week, and just constantly everything. So, nice. Maybe about 3 years ago, I got into a situation to where I had an opportunity to just do entertainment, because believe it or not, most guys, especially on the independent level, they have real jobs where they have to go and do their real job Monday through Friday, and then they get to be weekend warriors and all that. So just like everybody else, I was in that situation, and there came an opportunity where it's like, hey, I might be able to pull this thing off. And so the idea there was to get something on the calendar every single day, because if you're not working, you're unemployed. And and any wrestler or any entertainer that's listening to this knows exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't have something on the calendar that day, you're not getting paid. And so it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make all these? So it's been very, very cool. And with the pandemic, you kind of have to pivot and figure out different ways to to do things when those live events go away. And so that's what we're kind of in the process of doing here now.
Nice.
Well, like one of the big
Does that answer your question?
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. No, that actually, I think we're done. This interview's handled. No,
Yeah, sorry guys.
no, we're good.
No, that was beautiful.
I got two more that I will definitely let the other boys get their words in, but no, we're all together. Thank you.
So like one of the big ones comes obviously like you being from Memphis, and of course you mentioned his name because like even without you even mentioning his name, I was gonna ask you like right away, Jerry the King Lawler, like your relationship with him, you know, like how well do you know him? You know, I know you've wrestled him at one point, and you know, kind of you running a promotion in Memphis, and you know, Jerry the King Lawler and Jerry Jarrett and Jeff Jarrett running the USWA, and you know, of course, like the Impact and all that. I mean, what's your kind of like? Have you ever modeled your promotion after the USWA at some point? You know, or you know, kind of the early days of TNA, or you know, like Nashville, Memphis, you know.
Really good question. I mean, obviously grew up watching the King and have a big respect for Jerry Jarrett. I'm friends with Jeff. Talked to him a couple weeks ago. I talk to King all the time. You know, I say all the time. I mean, we're very active Facebook friends, the whole 9 yards and all that stuff. We work a lot together. And so when this whole deal was going down, CW30 was looking to have wrestling on their programming. And so during that time when we actually signed to be the guests for just the station in general, without wrestling, just the station, one of the first questions that the general manager asked is, hey, how come there's not wrestling on in Memphis? And I'm kind of like, again, like, you're the TV guy, you tell me. He's like, well, you're the wrestling guy, you tell me. And so shortly after that, they signed with Lawler to do his classic Memphis wrestling show. All the meanwhile, we were putting together our championship wrestling product. And so there came a point when we signed the deal to where I called King, went and sat down with him. Now, we've wrestled each other 100 times. Literally, if you go on YouTube, you can find most of those. It's you look up 5-Star Fan Cam on YouTube. Shout out to Fred. He's 5-Star Fan Cam Fred. He's at all the matches and records all the matches and stuff. But I went and me and Maria had dinner with King and said, all right, here's what we got going on. And he was like, wow, that's very cool. So we were able to put together a 2-hour block to start off. Now, his classic show eventually went away. I think it went to YouTube and ours remained. But anytime there's a way for us to make money together, I'll call King and say, hey, when can I come? And I just go and we sit at his kitchen table and we talk business. And sometimes he's on board and sometimes like, well, I'll pass on that one. Let's do this instead. And there will be a time where we get back together about the next project that we're going to do. And Jerry Jarrett is a guy that I talked to before I launched the company. And not really to get his blessing or anything, but just because he's just to be able to talk to those guys and kind of, you know, maybe get a little advice or let them know what we got going on is pretty cool. But yeah, unless they're saying it behind my back, which is okay as long as they don't say it to me, we're
far away from the subject we mentioned earlier. If you can and if you want to, go back 10 years ago between that conversation you had with WWE, between what you had envisioned for yourself there and what they wanted. Could you go into any kind of detail about those conflicting ideas?
Yeah, so basically it was height. So nowadays you see the guys that, you know, the AJ Styles, Drake Maverick. I mean, I could name off a whole list of guys that they have on the roster that are fantastic workers. But back then, I really went through a tryout process. I went to Tampa, Florida, and did a developmental camp that Jinder Mahal got signed out of, actually. Also, Reno Scum was there as well, and we still remain, all of us still remain friends to this very day. But when they invited me to this camp, that was when Umaga had passed away.
Okay.
And so some of the decision makers were not there for that. And so that kind of stunk. But I went through a whole process of going in. And, you know, one of the things that John Laurinaitis asked me at one point was, what does Dustin Starr have that no other wrestler has here? And I said, oh, man, I've got heart. I've got desire. And he's like, oh, come on. Everybody has
Everybody
heart.
says that. I knew you were going to say that he was going to say that because I've heard that too. Yeah. And that's
as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, don't, almost like, don't let this opportunity pass you. So he goes, no, what do you have that nobody else has? And seriously, no lie, I did like this. And I said, well, I've got a pretty cool hairdo. And he laughed.
Very,
said,
very
okay,
honky tonk. Channeled the inner honky.
Said, okay, kid, we'll see you tomorrow. And so the next day there was, everybody from Triple H, Arn Anderson, Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon, Fit Finlay. I mean, everybody was around the ring. And I must have wrestled 3 matches in a row. And at the end of that, they said, okay, you work pretty good. You do this pretty good. You do that pretty good. You look okay, that kind of stuff. But they weren't ready to sign me. So for the next day, I was like, oh, my gosh. Like, I was just feeling just terrible. And then I said, okay, I need to pick something that I could do better at. So I look okay. All right, well, I'm going to look better the next time I go. So about 3-4 months later, I went back. I was 215 at that time, and I had slimmed down to about 183. They thought I had gained weight. They actually told me, we have a wellness policy here, don't you?
Holy shit.
Like, sure, test me. And
they thought you were okay. I mean, it's fair that they have that policy, but to assume that,
yeah. And so I asked for the job, sign me up, and then that's when the camp happened. And then the camp, I felt like they invited me to the camp. I felt like I was going to get signed out of the camp. Dr. Tom Pritchard was there, who has spent time in Memphis. I mean, it was Steve Kern was there, which spent time in Memphis. We were actually warming up, stretching in the ring with like 80 other guys. There was 2 or 3 rings. And Steve Kern walks in with his cell phone and goes, is there a Dustin Starr here? And I was like, me? And he goes, Jerry Lawler's on the phone for you. Everybody, every head goes, and I'm like, oh. So I get out, I take the call, and King wanted tickets to the hockey game that night. So I was like, that was cool, but then also it was kind of like, who's this guy,
Yeah.
And so fast forward again, I got booked on Royal Rumble, Raw, and SmackDown, which Royal Rumble was on the Sunday in Georgia. That was the return of Edge. And so
this was last year.
The hockey team that I worked for knew that I was getting that opportunity. They put something on the scoreboard that had me with a WWE logo, and it said, congratulations, Dustin Starr. Well, when I showed up at Royal Rumble, Ty Bailey calls me over. And first of all, I'm like, hey, he knows my name. That's awesome. And second of all, he was like, you're not invading WWE, right? You don't work here, right? And I'm like, I'm here to try to work here. So anyways, it had gotten back to them that I was invading WWE, so they were throwing me out of the building.
What?
And he said, I hope you understand. And again, I was like in that situation where like, oh no, don't let this. So I go, actually, sir, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And if there's somebody I need to apologize to, I will. My goal is to work with you guys, and that's why I'm here. So that was the company supporting me. And he said, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. So they still threw us all out. They threw everybody out because Edge was making his return that night to the Royal Rumble, and they threw everybody out. So the next day I show up. I know I'm going into a long story, but I thought.
No, go ahead. By all means.
We're here for the stories.
The next day was Monday Night Raw, and John Laurinaitis is probably about 20 yards from me, and he stops in his tracks, and he is, Dustin. Again, I'm like, he knows my name. And he goes, that was some dumb shit you put on the internet. And he was like, took a lot of balls to do that. And kind of smirked and walked away.
You never know which way those conversations go.
I just got over. Because he literally smirked and walked off. So anyways, now I'm the next day on SmackDown. I'm like, this is my last opportunity here. And so I requested a meeting, whatever. But before I ever had the meeting, they called me over. One of the referees actually came over and said, hey, congratulations. I said, for what? And he said, I heard you're getting signed. And I'm like, they haven't told me that. And so anyways, Laurinaitis calls me over. R-Truth happened to be there, which Truth wrestled in Memphis. Yep. And he remembered me. And so he was super cool. Hey, man, what's up? All that kind of stuff. And so anyways, boom, bam, boom. They said that they were interested in signing me and that they would contact me on Thursday. And I said, was there anything I need to do before then? And he said, yes, stay off the internet. They had this big thing about the internet, and I have no idea why, because now it's the biggest thing they have.
Right.
And so I literally stayed off the internet, and they called me on Thursday and hung up on me.
What?
I called him back, and he said, Dustin, why'd you hang up on me? I said, I promised I didn't hang up on you. I've been waiting on this call for, 15 years. He hangs up on me again. This is Ty Bailey. And so I called you have to go through the receptionist each time. So I said, I don't know what's going on in our phones. And she said, hold on a second. He's like, Dustin, what the hell? So anyway, I think he was working me. And then he said, okay, we're going to overnight you a contract, review it. We need you to go drug test, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Stay off the internet. And then I signed and reported. It's the craziest freaking story ever. But the reason that's how I got signed, they wanted to sign me to be a referee, a ring announcer, and a broadcaster. And really all I did was referee is basically what I did. And they thought it was because of longevity with my height,
Right.
Because other than guys like Rey Mysterio, and let me tell you, I'm nothing like as fantastic as Rey Mysterio is. There's not even a comparison. But they just felt like I would have a longer career with WWE doing something like that than being a wrestler. And so, I would still bump with the guys during the developmental days. Dr. Tom would let me do that until it was ixnayed. They even wanted to change my workout routine to where, they literally said, I can't have your guns hanging out of your shirt, making the boys look bad. That's a direct quote. And so, we went through the whole thing. And then eventually they told me I would go on the road. And then the next week they were like, hey, man, we know you want to entertain. Go do that, get over, and then come back whenever you want. And fortunately, people do ask, well, why haven't you gone back? Well, if I do that, I'm exclusive to them. I can't work for the Grizzlies. I can't work for the Redbirds. I can't do anything that I'm doing now.
Especially now when they're really seizing down on like the Twitch and the cam. They are just
I would be exclusive to them, and that's all. So there is an opportunity to do other things. I've done some interviews with Cody and Brandy, and we were guests backstage at Dynamite when they were here in Memphis or in South Haven. So there's some other opportunities, but at this point, I'm running my own wrestling company. So,
I agree with you 100%.
Best things.
Definitely.
That is like a dream come true with a silver lining, because you do I don't know how to put it. Like, you have what you wanted, but also you're getting what you need at the same time. Like, you have that opportunity, but at the sacrifice of so much more. But knowing that it's, I guess, essentially waiting for you when you want it, has to kind of help fill the void of not being with the company.
Well, and they still, if that opportunity comes up and I want to jump on it, they still have to sign me. It's not like a guarantee. So
right.
Another little thing that I think of is during the tryout when I was talking to Steve Kern, who ran Florida Championship Wrestling. It's one of those things. Hey, man, I'm from Memphis. I've watched you. I've watched all the guys, as I was growing up. This is what I want to do, whether it's sweeping the floors or putting up the rings, this is where I want to be. So my first day I reported to developmental. He called me into the other room to the main arena part, and he handed me a broom. And he said, remember what you told me? I said, yes, sir. And I swept the floors.
There's no shame in the hazing game in pro wrestling. Let it be said right now that they will do whatever they want at any time. It's
anything you do before you get there at that point did not really matter.
Yep.
But I will say positively what it did is I did run a drive-in wrestling show on Halloween Day. And I paid a ring crew to set that ring up, and I helped them. And then also I was the last person to leave that parking lot because I took the ring down in my suit. So it definitely gives you a different perspective of like, you know what, if I have to get dirty and do this, that's what I'm going to do because that's what I like to do.
Yeah. So I had this question prepped before that story, but it actually segues perfect into your physical shape. I saw photos where it looked like you may compete or do fitness shows or model. Is that accurate? Do you find
I won the Mr. Tennessee Men's Physique Championship overall 2 years in a row in 2012, 2013. So I got you guys. Have you ever heard of Phantasmo?
Yes.
The wrestler?
Yes.
Del Rios, the Spellbinder.
Yep.
He's a good friend of mine. He's another one of the Memphis legends that I've become very friendly with. So when I left WWE, I didn't feel like I was going to wrestle that much. And he said, why don't you get into bodybuilding? And I said, man, I don't know about that because he is huge. I'm like, 5'11", You know, I try to stay around 190 to 200 pounds. I try to stay within striking distance just in case I get a call or something, you know.
There's a website I have up, a fandom of yours. It has you listed a little bit more than both of those numbers. It has you listed at 6 feet exactly at 227. Was that ever an accurate number? I mean, obviously height doesn't change, but.
No. Anytime you've seen me really lean, it's probably been 185,
Okay.
I was on stage at like 183, but looked bigger than that.
And do you have to fluctuate your body shape for your cardio and in-ring? So if you're competing, is it a completely different workout than something that's more utilized for long-term physicality? So you can't do both?
I have to fluctuate my my weight and stuff to fit these tight suits that I wear. Honestly, you know, or my weight belt. When I put my weight belt on, if I can't get it to that second rung or that third rung, I'm like, ooh, I need to cut back a little bit. But when he mentioned that, he said there was a new division called Men's Physique, and at this point, they've really outgrown that division. The guys are so big now that it's just really hard to compete. But yeah, I did win. I competed, and then I won my first show. I won like my first 4 shows in a row overall. I won back-to-back Mr. Tennessee Men's Physique titles in 2012 and 2013. I got signed with Team USP Labs, which is a nutrition company. Once they went out of business, there was a whole inside thing. You know, you probably heard of Jacked, the pre-workout. Yeah, that's what they were really big for, but they had some internal issues. Anyway, they spun off to Modern Sports Nutrition and Action Nutrition, so we signed with them. So it's been super cool. You know, they've honestly – I never in a million years when I was 15 wanting to get into the wrestling business ever thought that anybody would be using my pictures for like their supplements or something. Like totally blown away, but they have. And so that was super cool. But that was kind of, there's not a whole lot of money in that even when you get your pro card. So really that was kind of one of those things to where now when I go and do a professional wrestling show, I'm a 2-time Mr. Tennessee. Oh, yeah. And people think, oh, yeah, right, or whatever. But it's like, no, like, seriously, 2-time Mr. Tennessee.
Damn, I'm sure. Ivan, you're up.
Definitely.
Ivan is Mr. Modelo. 12 packs.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Yes, I'm the sponsor for Modelo. Okay. Yeah, but I'm not drinking right now. That's later on.
That's the night shows we do. We do night shows, and that's
that's the next show we'll have to do later on tonight. But yes, one thing I wanted to say definitely to you, Mr. Starr, is I commend you the fact that you being, you know, you pretty much are out there for the whole community, especially for the city of Memphis. You're out there, doing EMC for the Memphis Grizzlies, for the Redbirds, for hockey, for MMA. You've done a lot of work for the community itself, and that's a big shoes to fill, and you have done it successfully. So I wanted to say I commend you for it, and you're an inspiration for that. Believe me, you are.
Man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that we would love to do as well in the future, which we're, trying to do as well as much as we can, especially right now with this global pandemic, where it's very difficult to do that. But hopefully when the future comes, we'll see how it is. So now, moving on into what I would like to know, actually, talk about is how the relationship was founded between yourself and Mr. Marquez, and how did, the relationship came all about, and working together and, creating Championship from Wrestling.
Man, Facebook is it's the best of both worlds, right? When something's going on, it's like, oh my gosh, but then Facebook is a good way to stay connected. So I'll be honest, I wasn't exactly 100% familiar with the product, although of course I had seen it and had come across it from time to time. But me being in Memphis and them being in California, we're literally on the opposite side of the United States from each other. I got a direct message one day from David Marquez, and what happened is he had seen that me and Maria, we host the CW30 network here in Memphis. It is the #1 CW station in the United States. Jerry Springer, all the court shows, of course you got the news, local sports and all that kind of stuff. And so Dave saw that and it was like, wait, a wrestler is hosting the station, but there's not wrestling on there? And so to his credit, he knew that. And so he was going to put the puzzle pieces together. So he's like, hey, why don't we do something together in Memphis? And so we went back and forth for several months, gosh, maybe even a year. And I even put together a presentation, that same general manager that I told you about with Lawler show.
Yes.
I even pitched him a couple of different times, and he said he didn't really say no. He just said no to that particular idea. And so I also told you about that crossroads that I was like, well, I think I could do this. So that was at the time where me and Dave had really been talking a lot on Facebook, to where I just didn't think that a Hollywood product would do well in Memphis, because Memphis wrestling fans are snooty in the sense to where you can't pull the wool over their eyes. They know their pro wrestling. They've had all the greats have come through here. You can't just serve them up a product and tell them it's from Memphis if it's not.
Right.
But what if there were Memphis hosts, and what if there was Memphis content, but then it featured some of the best wrestling from Hollywood? Right. And so we put that together, and I'll never forget doing that pitch. I always like to compare it to Shark Tank.
There you go.
When they're interested, you know, I'll never forget that the general manager just kicked back and he smiled and he was like, I think we're onto something here.
What's the interest rate?
So then it was just, then it was all about putting it together, you know. And so then it was everything from the logo, but I didn't want to call it Championship Wrestling from Memphis because it wasn't from Memphis.
Right.
And fortunately, Pro Shingle has been our title and presenting sponsor since day one. They've been fantastic. They're a professional roofing company here, licensed in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And I was able to link up with Dave Brown, the old voice of Memphis wrestling, who is very well respected in the Memphis area. And I linked them together and signed them, literally introduced the two of them, and it was like a match made in heaven. And so we went in, did some screen tests, and that's how it came about. Now, the ultimate goal is to have Championship Wrestling from Memphis. And that will happen. It would have already happened, but the pandemic has slowed that down because it's extremely hard to do live events or even television tapings. And I know that Dave out in Hollywood is doing them without an audience, but there has to be some way to monetize those television tapings, because you're paying the boys to come in, you're doing all the stuff. There's a lot of money going out. And at this point, especially during the pandemic, it's extremely hard to have that working capital in order to just do it.
Right.
So the timing has been really terrible, but we will have Championship Wrestling from Memphis. That was the goal since day one. That's how it all came about with Dave Marquez. And it's been extremely cool being a part of the United Wrestling Network.
I definitely love it. You know, and unfortunately, with the whole global pandemic, there was a feud that you were gonna have, and I was looking forward to seeing. That was you and Ray Rosas. I was looking forward to see that.
Ray.
I was
shout out to Ray.
Boy.
Ray had a heck of a year in 2020, man. He went from he was gonna retire, and then he won the PP3 Cup. He won the Heritage title. He won the Arizona State title. He appeared on AEW. And if there's one thing, I hold a grudge for a really long time.
Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
He's watching right now, so let's hear it.
So there will come a day of reckoning with old Ray Rosas. And you know what? I'm really actually looking forward to it because he's fantastic in the ring. And, you know, all working aside, like he's so good, it would be impossible to have a bad match with him. So whenever we do launch here in Memphis, I do think that will be revisited. Maybe not to the extent that it was. And if you guys remember, we entered the Red Carpet Rumble, which was, that experience was so fun. And then Ray grabbed Maria by the arm and she screamed and I turned and he eliminated me. And then it was just one of those things, like I was going to get back at him. We cut some promos on each other on Memphis television. We were flying him in for the big birthday bash that we were having in April at AutoZone Park, which is where it was the premier minor league baseball stadium in the United States for a while. The Cardinals were winning World Series and their AAA team was right there. So, man, it was going to be awesome. And then the pandemic hit March just before that. So, but we will revisit that. I do plan to revisit that.
I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Actually, I still have a plane ticket with Ray Rosas' name on it.
Hey, well, I got another plane ticket you should probably pick up. Maybe one for London, and you got to get back at Nick Aldis and take that belt off him.
No, that's funny you bring that up. That's on YouTube. We did wrestle, and Nick extremely cool. I beat him for the Global Force Championship, only to have it overturned. But then,
Dusty
rigged. That was rigged.
Dusty
it was totally
finish.
rigged.
Dusty
So,
finish.
I don't know if I'm supposed to tell this story, but we all went to the Magic Castle out in Hollywood.
That's
yeah.
a block away from me. We love
I love that place.
I've
Oh,
only
man, I
seen
had
it
my
from outside the walls.
I had my 10 pounds of gold on my chest, lapel, and one of the guys, Mysterion, who has appeared on all sorts of television shows.
Magician, they do a magic show while you're eating, and they kind of
Yes. Well, he came over because he's a big wrestling fan. It was Ricky Starks, myself,
Nice.
my Maria, Nick Aldis, and Cowboy James Storm, which me and Cowboy go way back. We're all good buds. And shout out to Ricky, man. Ricky is tearing it up in AEW.
killing it right now.
Oh yeah.
But Mysterion, he wanted my 10 pounds of gold. I said, well, Nick's got the real 10 pounds of gold. Take his. And so he played this mind trick on us, and he read my mind. So I said, all right, I'll tell you what, if you do this, then I'll give you the 10 pounds of gold. So anyways, he came through with like this incredible magic trick, and I had to like literally take it off my shirt and give him the 10 pounds of gold.
Oh my god. Was it
I got beat that night.
Was it mentalism, or was it an actual like I'll grift it off of you without you looking, or did he like back you into like a rhyme corner? Like
It was one of these things where think of a professional wrestler, any wrestler. You just can't make it up, but it could be any wrestler in the world, whether you think I've heard about him or not. Write it down on this piece of paper and fold it up. And so me and Maria were over here. I mean, like nobody could see what we were writing down. And I wrote down the name Derek King, who was a Memphis wrestler, one of my good friends. And I folded it up. I'm like, there's no way he would know Derek King, right? That's kind of an underhanded compliment to Derek, by the way.
Yeah,
So
I get you.
and stuck it in my pocket. And he kind of did this little mind thing. He's working me. I'll tell you what. Derek King.
What the absolute?
Cowboy James Storm knows Derek. So he's like, Derek King? And they're like, who's Derek King? And I pulled a piece of paper out. I was like, Derek King. Oh, my gosh. So it was like the craziest thing ever. But he got it. And so I said, you know what? You deserve it. And so I gave him the 10 pounds.
I'm one of those guys who I love mystery, but I also love the solution to the mystery. I'm already racking my brain. Like there had to be like a mirror up in a corner behind you.
I know what it is.
What?
Chris, it's lip reading. Because sometimes you subconsciously talk when you think of people's names. Like
but I was thinking if you go one more detail, maybe it's handwriting reading, the lip reading equivalent of watching hand motions.
Yeah, because sometimes you write and talk when you write.
Or there's just security cameras everywhere. But Jesus, I'm gonna never.
I don't know how he did it, but he deserved the 10 pounds of gold.
Yeah,
so needless to say, I got to get another button.
I wouldn't have been mad at that either. I've been like, yeah.
Well, at least I have a good story to tell.
Yeah, and
That's awesome.
Appreciate you sharing it here because the Magic Castle is in our backyard. So hearing that story all the way.
Oh, you could eat crab legs.
Definitely.
Man, that's good.
So at this moment, we're hoping that with this pandemic goes away, which by the looks of it as of right now it's not. I mean, we're hoping not for another year. I'm hoping not, but once the doors are open, I'm looking forward to seeing Championship, Wrestling from Memphis to finally be on live shows, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the ring because I would say one thing: seeing you, I've seen your matches. You're incredible in the ring. You have one of the hottest heel personas that I enjoyed. You and Maria pull it off, the power couple. Love it 100%. I just wanted to ask, how did you develop that gimmick? At the time, being like one of the hottest heel in the independent circuit at the time.
I don't know about all that, but I appreciate it.
I'm sorry, but what I see. So
when I think as a kid when you're growing up, I've always been like a body guy. Like I liked Warrior and Hogan and the guys that had the big muscles and all that kind of stuff. British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith was one of my faves. Even Orton and just the way that Orton looks or whatever. And first, it starts right there for me. Like they look like action figures. Mm-hmm. And so adding Maria,
we're the same age, and I grew up on He-Man and seeing like you said, Warrior. I mean, Hell aside, Lex Luger, like just bodied up, just like
Lex Luger.
Yeah.
I thought Luger was good. You put Luger in the ring with Ric Flair, and they had some fantastic matches. I don't care what anybody says. Luger could be there. Now, if you put Luger in there with him and expect him to carry a great match, probably not going to happen. But you put him in there with somebody that can work with him, I mean, it's going to be and he looks awesome.
Yeah.
So I felt like I wanted to, growing up in the business and your body has to mature and all that kind of stuff. So eventually I felt like I was kind of where I wanted to be there. The bodybuilding helped with that. But then also adding Maria, which was a funny thing. Jerry Lawler's son, Kevin Lawler, asked us to do a show. And he said, do you think Maria wouldn't want to accompany you to ringside? And I said, no chance. She just wasn't into it. He said, well, it's on TV. Ask her if she wants to be on TV. And so I said, hey, it's on TV. And she's like, yeah, I'll do it. And so when she came back, she was like, oh, you should have heard the things that they called me. And I was like, well, you did a good job. That's why. What do you mean? Like, she couldn't believe the things that they were. Yeah, that little kid was flipping me off. I'm like, that's what they do.
It is harder to be a face than a heel in the business. So, like, getting a reaction like that from a kid.
Then I just felt like, I don't know. I felt like that kind of completed the package with her being there with me because I'm the jerk, cocky egomaniac who thinks he looks good but then has like the best looking woman in the room kind of thing. And so it just, I don't know, I just felt really comfortable at that point. And then not having to really worry about, working outside of what I'm comfortable doing. I'm basically gonna kiss her, do push-ups, flex, and maybe drop kick you. That's all I got.
The last thing you want is the overachiever to be able to kick your ass. Like
and then I strut around.
80s bad guy. You were Cobra Kai, bro.
Yeah, I strut around, and then it got to where I was really good friends with Brian Christopher, Grandmaster
Sexy.
That's right.
And so in the locker rooms and on road trips, he would just say, "Oh yeah," like he would just. I don't know. You'd have to know Brian, but everything. Oh yeah. Like just little stuff.
Did he laugh like that in real life, or was that just a part of the Jerry's Kid character?
Oh, I mean, it was what you saw on TV was Brian Christopher just amplified, but sometimes he would be that amplified outside of the ring.
I love that guy, man. I really miss him on just in general. I never met him obviously as a fan, but just in content alone.
Last time I saw him. Other than the hospital that night was we pulled up at Tupelo Con and he had his car doors open standing outside the car with his own CD cranked up. Kind of like
was it the turn it up?
Doing his own thing.
Was it the
Well, he had a CD that he wrapped.
Oh, right. That's great.
So it sounds silly, but that's just what it was like. He was popping the boys, and when we pulled up, we're like, oh gosh, Brian's in a good mood tonight. And, just everything from taking a selfie. Hold on a second. Let me do my push-ups. And he would do some, because he was like, all right, look at Jack, man. Let me do some push-ups before I take a picture with you and all that. But, several years back, I just took little things that he would, and I really amplified it later on, but he would say stuff like, oh yeah. And even the strut that I kind of do, that disgusting, just filthy strut that I strut around the ring is kind of a Brian Christopher thing. And so, just being friends with him, not necessarily and I was a mark for him too, but being friends with him too really helped. But then I just started yelling, oh yeah. And then people would yell, oh yeah, back. And I'm like, all right. So then I put it on my tights.
They know it was Kool-Aid.
It was just easy at that point. Cause if I yell, oh yeah, and everybody else yells, oh yeah, back, it's just easy. So that's kind of how all that kind of came about. But then that's where that whole character and all that stuff came from. And even when we're good guys, bad guys, it doesn't matter. We work basically the same. People want to see Maria slap somebody, and then I yell, oh yeah, and flex some muscles and kiss her, and that's all we got.
But I love it though.
But I don't know how much wrestling. Now I will wrestle. Like I'm not retired or anything like that. I'll never be officially retired, but I will host Championship Wrestling from Memphis. So it will be me and Maria. That's the idea at this point anyway, is for us to be at the desk calling the commentary, just like Todd Kinley, who I'm a big fan of, and then also a big fan of Bulletproof Troop on the show. He has been good. James Kincaid is good as well. He's been a good third edition. We love Kathy Campanelli or Kat Marino, whatever you want to call her. But I can totally see where it would be me and Maria at the desk. And then, you know, something always happens, especially Memphis wrestling, where a fight's picked and then you have to get in the ring. So we still have to figure out how to juggle that, because people will want to see us, especially in Memphis. They will want to see us wrestle. But we'll host the show first and foremost. That hurts a whole lot less, by the way.
Yeah. Definitely it will. Definitely it will. Before the whole pandemic, even before the shutdown, which, I mean, you're not throwing any names out there, but throughout, you know, your career, you know, as even right now, how you said it is on pause, you haven't been wrestling, but which one by far has been your favorite out of all the matches that you had as of yet?
Oh man, that's a really hard one. I'd have to think about that one. I think different matches. You like different matches for different reasons.
Yes.
You know, had some really good matches with Jeff Jarrett. You know, and these little small towns, when they, you know, pack 200-300 people into a small building, and it's just fire. I mean, no matter what you do is just fire. I mean, like Maria strutting, doing a strut off with Jeff Jarrett, and the people just went absolutely nuts for it. Wrestling Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn is one of those guys, man. He's like 6'8" or something.
He's in better shape now than he was in DX. It is insane.
Oh my gosh. I looked at him and I said, man, what am I supposed to do with you? I mean, if he doesn't want me to do it, there's just no way that I'm going to do it. He is a man. Like, he's a big dude. Also, Buff Bagwell, though. Buff Bagwell is
I love me some Buff, dude. Good name drop.
Love Buff Bagwell. I dieted my ass off to wrestle Buff Bagwell because I wanted to stand across the ring and be able to flex on Buff. Same thing with Big Papa Pump. And he wrestled with his shirt on. He wrestled with his shirt on. I was really disappointed because those matches were really cool for different reasons. There was a match that I did at FedEx Forum with Grizz as my tag team partner.
Okay.
And me and Grizz wrestled the Texas Barbecue Boys, which was Alan Steele and Derek King. And it was the main event of the night. It was at halftime. So the halftime performance was our wrestling match.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I wasn't really –
our fans, when they obviously know that that's happening, are they hockey fans that get to watch a wrestling match, or are they fans of both that get to watch both?
This was at basketball. So this was in FedEx Forum.
Okay, got it.
But it was built up through the night where these guys from Texas were trying to say that the Texas barbecue was better than Memphis barbecue. And we're like, oh, come on. Memphis barbecue, nothing beats Memphis. And so anyway, they picked a fight with Grizz. I said, Grizz, what are you going to do? You don't have a tag team partner. And Grizz looked around and he's like, you. And me? I'm not dressed to wrestle. It's like me and you. So, he doesn't talk, so he's pantomiming. I'm doing the whole thing. So anyways, it was me and Grizz versus the Texas Barbecue Boys, which was Derek King and Alan Steele. And we had our match. And I remember dieting so hard for that match. And I was like, okay, they didn't want me to wrestle in my wrestling gear. They just wanted me to wear like a sleeveless shirt or something like that. And I remember going, all right, I got to take my shirt off. And they're like, no, we don't want you to take your shirt off. And I'm like, well, can't somebody tear my shirt off? And they're like, please don't take your shirt off.
Was that just like a
I'm like, oh, I dieted super hard for this. But it was just something about wrestling there, because a lot of the basketball fans, they're not necessarily wrestling fans, although they do know that wrestling's big in Memphis.
Yes.
And then also, whether they liked wrestling or not, a lot of them thought it was cool that Grizz, and then our MC, really, he can drop kick, he can kick some ass. And then my MC partner, BLJ, was involved. And so it was just kind of a cool thing. And we have a picture of all of us raising our hands in the middle of the ring. And that's the one of only 2 Grizzly Weight World titles. And that one's autographed by Buff Bagwell, Dave Brown. Gosh, I mean, just a lot of the guys that were a part of the wrestling nights that we've done. I mean, we've had everybody from the Steiner brothers to Jeff Jarrett, the King, Lance and Dave. Buff has been on almost every one of them because we love Buff. He's just been so cool to work with.
Buff is the stuff.
But those are a couple of the matches. I mean, I think I'm more of a fan of who I'm working with and why I'm working with them than I am of the actual match. Like the Nick Aldis match was super cool because Mickie James was there, and Mickie James tackled Maria. And so we all had our little moment there, which we thought was super cool. Mickie James is a Hall of Famer, and I think Nick Aldis,
best double date ever.
yeah, and Nick Aldis is the best NWA World Champion of the modern times. I mean, I think if you put him in a WWE ring or an AEW ring holding the 10 pounds of gold, it holds up.
Yeah,
it's not like. He's not like a secondary afterthought NWA champion to me. He's the man in this era. He is the man.
Agreed.
So,
Now,
One of the most respected titles ever.
Yeah. Keeping this line of questioning as professional as I can without getting personal, your wife, was she a fan of wrestling before she met you, and then you got her and kind of pulled her into it and she like started to fall in love with it? Or was she already into it? That's, what's the correlation between the business and the love going on?
Unfortunately, I think her family watched a little bit of the Attitude Era, but she was more of a pageant girl, so she won pageants growing up and all that kind of stuff. And so it's kind of like, well, it's pageants, for like bad guys.
Miss Mona, Holly started off with a pageant gimmick.
But once you get in it, once you have your first match or you're involved in it one time, you are addicted because you learn that you can make the fans respond, and just even if you're a bad guy, she thought, wow, you can really get a reaction from the fans. And then it turned into promos, which she was already emceeing for the Memphis Redbirds, so she could talk on the microphone. So then it was like, okay, so how do we mold this into a bad guy character for you to introduce me, and she would always do my ring introductions and give me all these, two-time Mr. Tennessee, this, that, the other thing, and, best body in the room or whatever it was. And he's all mine, Dustin Starr, whatever, and it just worked out. But yeah, she wasn't a wrestling fan growing up.
And you were just like, hey, you should walk me out to the ring. This is perfect. And she was like, all right, let's do this. Basically, I mean,
the first time she saw any of this was, one of our first dates. I asked her if she wanted to go to a television taping, and she was like, sure, why not? And so we got there, and I did commentary on a thing, and she was just looked at the people and how they reacted and was just like, what have you taken me to? And then the TV opportunity came up, and she did that, and then from then it was just like she's in it,
Nice. Yeah, it's a bug, man. I swear. Like, my fiance took me to her first wrestling event was a house show for Christmas at the Staples Center last year. She had never been to a live event. She doesn't watch it. She knows I watch it, but she bought me the tickets for Christmas, and we went. And I'd like to think that she enjoyed it. It was definitely a different environment than what she'd expected. But as soon as I knew who was coming out, I was cueing her. I'm like, oh, okay, that's Daniel Bryan. You need to go like this with everybody else. Or you need to – I was telling her, I was like prepping her for the chance. I'm like, oh, when, you nasties, whatever her name is. I was like, when she punches Lacey Evans. I know her name. I love her. I just was blanking because I'm excited about this. I was prepping her for everything. I'm like, oh, this whole match is going to be in red because he's kind of like a demon from hell. Or you need to boo this or cheer that. Or whenever you see Charlotte throw a punch, you need to go, woo! And
right.
Yeah, I like to think she had a blast. She's sitting somewhere behind me and can't hear me, so.
Maria is more of a fan of the promos and stuff, where she really likes Stephanie McMahon. When she cuts a promo, I mean, that WrestleMania introduction that she did for Triple H, I had her watch that. She was
my husband, Triple H, and he came out on the bike. Was that the bike one? Yes.
I mean, she literally owns the screen when she's cutting a promo. She is so mean and nasty and just literally owns it. But then you meet her backstage, and she is like the sweetest soul ever. It's just shocking. But anytime that, especially when there's a woman doing a promo on television, she's kind of, if it doesn't catch her right off, then it's probably not that good of a promo. But she's very much interested, especially Stephanie.
Yeah, Stephanie, she was doing like, I had old 1991, I forget the name of the merchandising magazine that they would send to my house, but it was just T-shirts, and she was like 12, just wearing Hulk T-shirts that were just like all neoned up and stuff. Yeah. And then cut to the Attitude Era when she's getting married to Test, getting whatever that angle was, is kind of a really offensive angle.
Yep.
Just to see that development of her from daddy's little girl to Daddy's Little Girl is
Yeah.
very
I'm actually-
underrated career progression.
I'm actually watching that currently. I watched some of the old pay-per-views and stuff. I went through, my favorite wrestling year was 97, but I started watching from 97 pay-per-views up, and now I'm right there with that test angle where she ended up turning on Vince, her dad, and all that stuff.
Right.
And I still think to this very day, how did Test not become a main event star and get his big feud with Triple H during that?
I
That's
don't
a whole
think he was
different
good. I
topic.
don't think he
but,
was
like,
good on the
should
mic.
have been made a star at that point.
Yeah, I don't think
Definitely.
they gave him enough mic time. Like, I think that was probably the one area because in TNA, Trish was the mouthpiece. So I just don't think they developed the character, which is not Andrew's fault at all, obviously, because there's a
Right.
lot of that going on right now.
Oh
But I
yeah,
agree with you.
definitely.
I love
but that's the
I
thing.
was a huge fan of like the long-haired blonde guys like Shawn Michaels, Jericho, Kevin Nash, Test. If you looked like I want to look in a video game, I'm a fan.
Right. Me too.
Definitely. So, my other question I wanted to ask. So, as we're seeing as of right now, what are your thoughts about it? We are seeing a lot of crossovers in different promotions. Obviously, with Mr. Marquez, he's working with New Japan. Rocky. He's worked with NWA, which you guys are currently working with. Where do you see this crossover? Like, what are your thoughts? And also, as well, follow-up question with that as well. In regards for expansion, I know there's Championship Wrestling in Hollywood here with us in California, Championship Wrestling from Memphis, Championship Wrestling from Arizona. Do you see a bigger expansion coming within the next 5 years?
That seems to be the trend is major promotions that are not WWE are now not afraid to cross those borders. And I love that evolution that obviously Ivan named some big names that are crossing over to cross promotion. And with his question, do you see that being the future of non-W and hopefully even WWE implementing a bigger crossover type of business model?
Well, Triple H recently said that they're open for business.
How much of that can he really control, though? I mean, I know he has his mouth in the ear, but we all know the final say comes down to one guy.
They do have a network, and they're going to need more content. And I think they're going to look to the independent scene. They're going to look for those companies that have good production quality because they can always make the wrestling better, right? So the actual in-ring work can always get better. Guys can get signed to WWE even if they don't even know how to lock up, just based off of potential and the way that they're presented.
that big guy with AJ Styles. I'm sorry I forget his name, but I don't think he at all has any.
Omos, right?
Right, yeah. I don't even know what sport he comes from, if any. But I just know he's just a bodyguard right now.
I worked with Big E back in 2010 in the developmental, and he was the strongest man in the state of Florida. That was legit. They literally signed him because he was the strongest man in the state of Florida, and they would let him off on the weekends sometimes to go and defend that title and to win powerlifting contests. So he didn't have any wrestling background or anything. So potential can get you 3 years easy. And then now look at him now. He's going to be a future world champion. I said that since day one. He's Intercontinental champion now. He will be.
We pray for that development right now. We're
no doubt about it.
Little bummed
I love
on
the crossover.
run.
I love the crossover stuff. Reality of Wrestling works really closely with Championship Wrestling. And I love Will Allday. I think we're going to see Will Allday on one of these bigger – and I hate to say bigger stage because Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is syndicated on 125 different stations across the United States. Memphis's version, our version is different in the sense that we have different hosts and a little bit of different content, but the wrestling is pretty much the same. You've had multiple different championships defended. NWA, we recognize their titles. Reality of Wrestling. There is another that slips my mind, but it's Wrestle Kingdom or something of that nature that we've had their champions on our program as well. Also, I'm sure you guys have noticed, there are a whole plethora of our roster members that are getting AEW opportunities. Everybody from Ray Rosas to Watts. Danny Limelight picked up his first victory on AEW Dark this week. The list goes on. Vipress. If I didn't say Heather Monroe, let me say it again. Heather Monroe. She's going to be signed somewhere really soon.
Peter Avalon trains a lot of those names. He's like Ray Rosas is like most current.
Peter Avalon.
Trainer. Yeah.
Brandon Cutler. Luchasaurus. MJF. Scorpio Sky was a staple for many years in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. He's been on our program. So I think it's a good platform for these guys and gals to get opportunities and to get signed elsewhere. And, that's going to be no different with a Memphis product. But I do think you're going to see a lot more of that. I think you're also going to see WWE get in the mix, even if it's not like featuring, you know, Championship Wrestling on WWE Raw. It might not be that. It might be, you know, some sort of product going on to WWE Network, because content is king.
Yeah,
you got to have the content.
Yeah.
And if you can bring something, I honestly think that the WWE Network will be a one-stop shop to watch all wrestling.
That's what UFC did with Fight Pass. I mean, you don't just go. I mean, there's really not that much UFC content on there. As far as live events go, it's all in the ESPN Fight Pass app. But UFC's Fight Pass now has like kickboxing. It has every major jiu-jitsu event, not just MMA and not just their MMA. You can watch, I think, Legacy's on there, the Eddie Bravo Invitational. I think Chael Sonnen's, I forget what he calls his, like, fight jiu-jitsu something. I think that model that Dana White has implemented is a huge inspiration to what they should be doing on the WWE Network, because I don't really care if I say this out loud. I kind of canceled that network because I've either seen everything or there's nothing new on it besides just NXT. And I'm not going to pay $10 to watch NXT when I have YouTube or other programs.
Right.
USA.
But yeah, I can watch live on USA. Exactly.
Cheap plug. If you go to youtube.com/Championship Wrestling, that's our official YouTube channel. We're averaging over 300 new subscribers every single month. Right now, we're averaging about 350,000 minutes watched each month. People are coming and they're watching us. And I know if they're watching
201 new subscribers, because I just clicked it right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No worries, brother.
But the thing there is you have feature matches. You have X-Pac versus Daniel Bryan. You have special playlists where you can just go and click Danny Limelight or Tyler Rust. That's
I love that.
name.
I love that, because that is what I do usually before we have, like, when Ray Rosas was on, I was familiar with him, but I hadn't seen a lot of his matches. So I had to manually type them all in, hunt them down, find different promotions that were featuring his acts or his matches. And I see right here, you have those playlists. I see Will All Day right in front of me. I can click on that. Probably gives me everything he's done that you have his content for, and I can just watch that without having to search too deep for it.
You know, and that's just, you just make it easy for people to find and easy for people to watch. So if you do click on WWE Network, now when I was there in 2010, which, gosh, that's been a long time ago, the network was an idea. Yeah. And they said, Vince thinks the internet's the wave of the future. Well, you know what? Now it's the wave of now. Yep. And so fast forward, now you see that they unrolled this and it's a real thing, and you can find anything you want on there. And before long, I honestly think that you'll see classic Memphis Wrestling on there. I think the only reason classic Memphis Wrestling isn't on there is because they don't know really who owns the footage. Yeah. You know, does Jerry Lawler own it? Does Corey Macklin's family own it? Does Channel 5 own it? Who literally owns that footage? And if you
Jim
don't,
he owns all of it.
Who? Somebody's going to get to pay. Somebody has to get paid for that footage for WWE to use it. Yeah. You know, I think one day we're going to see OVW on there. Why wouldn't we? We're going to see Florida Championship Wrestling on there. All those, you know, now it's moved to Orlando, but before it was in Tampa. You're going to see all that stuff on there.
Nothing to do that. Just send their engineers the footage. They upload it. How hard is that?
See, I don't know if Steve Kern owns that footage, because he owns. Okay, so I do have a partnership with Dave Marquez as far as production and being a syndication, but as far as owning, our company is Memphis Championship Wrestling LLC. We own that, me and Maria. Mm-hmm. So if something happened with United Wrestling Network on their end, we still have our wrestling company. We just have to find something else to put on the actual show, if you know what I mean. Yes. So it might be something similar to where he owned that Florida Championship Wrestling. It was probably his TV deal. So there's a lot of red tape when you're doing partnerships and stuff like that. So we really don't know who owns what footage and all that kind of stuff. But bottom line is, I think that we're going to see a lot of those crossovers. I'm really, really happy that people like Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb are just – they're not just putting the NWA Women's World Title on television and acting like you know how WWE did back in the day with NWA. Okay, these guys were tag team champions, or whatever title they decided to feature, a North American Championship with Jeff Jarrett at that time. No, man, they are literally featuring them like they are stars and they are real champions, which that's what we need, because that helps build brands and build new stars in wrestling. And Thunder Rosa arguably is the best female wrestler going right now.
As of right now, yes. But there's
I mean, she's all over.
Yes, definitely 100%. I agree with you 100% on that.
Sure, yeah.
Definitely, because the fact is that's the one thing that is missing in every promotion is, especially in partnership. You obviously you're bringing a different promotion belt, a championship belt, to a different promoter, and you're treating it royalty, which is supposed to be treated as royalty, most definitely, and making it out there that it's a very prestige title, even though it's not their promotion's title. But I love it. I absolutely agree with you.
WWE has kind of failed in the sense back in the past when they try to bring in and act like they're going to feature somebody like Sting. He's a prime example. Mm-hmm. Sting is a major star anywhere he goes, right? But they brought him in just to have him lose to Triple H. They almost treated WCW like it was the secondary product. Mm-hmm. I get it. WWE's the feature. I get it. But that didn't really do him any favors.
No.
You just brought Sting in and you beat him. Now Sting is doing some cool stuff over here now. They never looked at it. They never tried to put that on the same level. And to me, AEW has put the NWA Women's World Title on the same level. I mean, they've paired them up. They paired the champions up. So they put it on the same level as their own title, and that's cool.
Definitely. I'm 100% with you on that. And hopefully in the future, which we were, we're praying for it, that we see a lot more cross promotions, especially, with Championship Wrestling, hopefully with AEW or, any other promotions out there. I'm looking forward to seeing, your promotion live once everything, the doors are open. I'm looking forward to seeing you and Ray Rosa. So being there as a fan, I need to be there. So that's most definitely I got to be there. Just wanted to go ahead and so you give our audiences, where can they find you? Where can they follow you in your social media platforms?
Well, you could follow me at Dustin Starr. So whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. You can follow my wife. You probably would like her more than you like me. It's at Maria Starr. But then you can find everything you need as far as Championship Wrestling at CW30 Wrestling. And then, of course, I think I've plugged it a couple of times, youtube.com/Championship Wrestling. And we literally do have a new video at least every single day. Whether it's feature matches, there's a women's wrestling playlist. And I'm going to tell you right here, right now, the whole thing about women's wrestling, and what people have this misconception about it, these women could probably kick all of our butts.
Oh, yeah.
And they will outdraw all of us, too.
Oh, yeah.
Women's wrestling, so we finally are going to have, for the first time in 10 years with Hollywood, there's going to be a United Wrestling Network women's champion. Ooh. And hopefully we'll be crowning that first champion here in the next couple of months. Also, the United Wrestling Network is going to crown a world champion. Yes. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's coming up, and you can catch it all on our YouTube channel or on our social media.
That is right, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it right. So make sure that you tune in every Saturday at noon Central Time, and that is for CW30 in Memphis, or also on YouTube. And also all the platforms will be below in the description, so make sure you guys follow that. And I want to go ahead and thank you, Mr. Starr, for joining us today, even though we had a little bit technical difficulties, but that didn't matter. I had a fun time, and I'm hoping that you come back again, and hopefully you come back again, and hopefully we can have you back on the show, and and have a little debate between you and Ray Rosas. We'll get him on the show.
We definitely do. That is, to be continued for sure.
Definitely.
Get some payback.
Exactly.
Like, geez, you hold a grudge, brother.
That's right. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Championship Wrestling official YouTube channel. I'm Maria.
And I'm Dustin. Thanks for joining us. We have so much great wrestling action just for you.
Click the playlist tab and you'll find superstar playlists from many of your favorite wrestlers like Heather Monroe, Danny Limelight, Tyler Rust, and so many more.
And don't forget about our feature matches playlist that's updated each week with brand new matches and some of your favorites from the history of the United Wrestling Network.
Plus, check out our YouTube exclusives like our year-end review featuring the best matches and wildest moments of 2020.
And of course, our Championship Wrestling Award show featuring the very best of 2020.
And if that's not enough, tune in to Championship Wrestling Podcast every Monday at noon and a brand new episode of Championship Wrestling every Saturday at noon.
It's all right here on our official YouTube channel. And don't forget, take that subscribe button to Slap City. Oh yeah!